shortly after the United States entered the war, the Normandie was seized and placed under naval guard. February 9th, 1942, the Normandie afire, a fatal tragedy to the big luxury liner and to America. Hundreds of doctors, nurses, and first aid workers were rushed to the scene to remove the wounded and to administer first aid to scores overcome in their efforts to stem the fury of the spreading flames. Again, millions line the New York and New Jersey shores to sadly observe the passing of the doomed and ill-fated ship, when, with a resounding crunch of ice and a belch of smoke, the 83,000-ton vessel dipped her flame-scarred superstructure into the surface of the Hudson River.
In the late 1920s and early 1930s, the world of ocean travel was entering a new golden age. Demand for fast, luxurious transatlantic passage soared. And in this climate, the design for what would become SS Normandie began. Built for the French shipping company CGT, Normandie was envisioned not just as a means of travel, but a floating palace, the ultimate statement of French elegance and engineering. Construction began in January 1931 in Saint-Nazaire, France. However, the global economic downturn from the Great Depression delayed her progress. And what might have been a straightforward build stretched out for several years. Despite economic headwinds, Normandie was a technological marvel. She featured a radical hull design with a bulbous bow and sleek lines that cut through the waves. Her propulsion came from turbo-electric engines driving her propellers, a cutting-edge system for the time. Her launch came on October 29, 1932, in front of 200,000 spectators. As she entered the water, a wave washed up on the shoreline over several hundred spectators. Luckily, no one was injured. She was fitted out and would not enter service until May 29, 1935. By the time she set off on her maiden voyage, she was the largest and most advanced passenger liner. At Le Havre, she took on 467 first class, 244 tourist class, and 101 third class passengers. Once in service, Normandie quickly earned a reputation for luxury and her modern design. Her interiors were lavish, Art Deco styled grand saloons, lounges, a massive dining hall, a swimming pool, theater, winter garden, and first-class suites so opulent that they rivaled the finest hotels. Normandie's main dining room was compared to the Hall of Mirrors at Versailles. The room was massive. The doors were 20 feet tall. The room was 305 feet long and could hold 700 people. It was the largest room on the open sea. She served as the flagship for CGT, operating primarily on the transatlantic route between Le Havre, France, and New York. Over her career, she made 139 westbound crossings. In terms of speed and performance, Normandie was unmatched. On her maiden voyage, she captured the prestigious Blue Ribbon, the award for the fastest transatlantic crossing, and would claim the honor again later in her career. But behind the glamour and headlines, there were challenges. Despite her luxury, Normandie struggled to achieve consistent commercial success. Her design and services were heavily skewed towards first-class clientele. Second- and third-class accommodations were less of a priority. Consequently, many crossings set off well below her capacity. She was celebrated as perhaps the greatest ocean liner ever built, yet commercially she faced stiff competition for more versatile ships.
For a lucky few, Normandy was more than a voyage. It was living art, sailing at sea. But beneath the shining surface, the harsh reality was that few could afford such extravagance, and for many voyages, the decks were quieter than expected.
RMS Queen Mary entered service in May 1936. Her gross registered tons were larger than Normandie's, giving her the title of the world's largest passenger ship. CGT responded by adding a tourist lounge on Normandie's aft boat deck, raising her tonnage and giving her the title once again as the world's largest passenger ship. As Europe sank into war in the late 1930s, the glamorous cruises of Normandy were overshadowed by global events. In August 1939, tensions were rising. Normandie completed one of her final voyages and returned to New York, a decision that would seal her fate. On September 3, 1939, the day France declared war on Germany, Normandie was interned by U.S. authorities in New York Harbor. She was ordered to remain at her berth, effectively laying up indefinitely. For a time, she remained under French ownership and crew, but locked in port. As the war progressed, the U.S. Coast Guard sent men to defend the ship against any possible sabotage. The American government grew increasingly uneasy about a massive French liner anchored in the harbor. Her crew remained, looking after the equipment and maintaining the fire watch system. Then came the attack on Pearl Harbor on December 7, 1941. Thrusting the United States fully into World War II. Barely days later, on December 12, 1941, the U.S. seized Normandie. Her crew was removed, and Normandie was transferred to the U.S. Navy, who took over command and duties on board the ship. Her elaborate fire system was abandoned. Normandie was renamed USS Lafayette, in honor of the French general who fought in the American Revolution. Plans were underway to convert her into a troop transport. What had once been a floating symbol of luxury was now being stripped and refitted for war. A transformation that stripped away gilded interiors, lavish decor, and glamour in service of new grim purpose. On February 9, 1942, while conversion work was underway to transform USS Lafayette into a troop ship, disaster struck. At around 2:30, worker Clement Derrick was using a welding torch in the Grand Saloon. Sparks ignited a stack of flammable life jackets made of Capic. To make matters worse, the liner's original fire suppression system, designed under French standards, had been disabled during the conversion. Workers tried desperately to put out the fire, but they could not stop it from spreading. To make matters worse, the hoses that New York fire crews brought did not fit the ship's French firefighting hookups. The blaze quickly became unmanageable. A dense cloud of oily black smoke rose over Manhattan. It was visible for miles. A strong wind fed the fire, spreading it across her 3 upper decks. Firefighting efforts continued. Eventually, water pumped into the blazing liner, began to accumulate and freeze in the cold February air, keeping it from draining from the ship. The added weight destabilized the ship, and she began listing to port. Vladimir Yurkovich, the ship's designer, arrived, but was barred by harbor police. He wanted to flood the lower decks to bring her to an even keel on the bottom, but he was overruled. Hours later, the fire was nearly under control, but water was now pouring in through openings in the now submerged parts of the ship. At 2:45 on February 10, 1942, Normandie rolled over onto her port side, resting at an angle of about 80 degrees at her berth, at Pier 88 on the Hudson River. One man was killed in the incident, a member of the Fire Watch, Frank Trentacosta, 36, from Brooklyn. Sabotage was immediately suspected. Organized crime groups claimed responsibility, but ultimately the investigation showed that the fire was accidental. What many considered the greatest ocean liner ever built was now burned and capsized. The United States Navy attempted salvage. In August 1943, cranes and winches eventually righted the vessel in what was at the time a remarkable feat of maritime engineering. But by then, the damage was far too great. The cost to restore her was far too much. In the post-war years, the decision was made to scrap her. By October 1946, what had once been a symbol of luxury, speed, and elegance was now being torched for scrap metal. It took until 1948 for the last recognizable remains of Normandie to vanish. The Art Deco Queen of the Atlantic, the ship that once held the blue ribbon, and the floating masterpiece of French engineering, reduced to silence and memory. Pieces of her interior, panels, statues, fittings, survive today in museums and private collections. I want to thank y'all for watching, folks. I hope you enjoyed, and we will see you on the next. Peace.